All right, let's talk about a place called Brainport Eindhoven in the Netherlands. You might not know the name, but trust me, it is the technological heart of Europe, a real powerhouse for the entire global tech economy. But, and this is a big but, this incredible engine room is facing a massive challenge, a dilemma that could shape the future for all of us, not just in Europe. So let's get into it and see what's really at stake here.
Take a look at this. This is one of the most important rooms on the planet. It's a high-tech clean room. It's where the most advanced semiconductor machines in the world are literally built. And this whole region, this amazing hub of innovation, is now facing a make-or-break test. And how it handles this test, well, that has huge implications for the technological independence of the entire Western world. Okay, so first things first. Let's really look at this engine room. To get why there's a dilemma, you first have to understand just how incredibly powerful this place is.
How powerful? We're talking 53.78 billion euros. That is the total added value of this one regional economy. To put that into perspective for you, that's bigger than the entire GDP of some countries. It is an absolute economic heavyweight. And get this, nearly half of that enormous number comes from just one sector: high-tech systems and materials. You can think of it as the super advanced manufacturing that builds all the complex machines, the stuff that powers our entire digital world.
Now here's where it gets really interesting. If you zoom in on just that high-tech sector, the picture gets even sharper. One company, a single company, the chip machine giant ASML, is responsible for almost half of that sector's entire value. So yeah, this makes Brainport unbelievably powerful, but it also means it's incredibly dependent on one single dominant player.
And that intense focus? Well, that brings us to the problem. The diagnosis, if you will. For all its strength, the region is running what you could call a strategic fever. It's showing all the symptoms of a really deep vulnerability.
So what's the core issue? It's this. Relying so heavily on one company and one sector creates a massive risk. It's like having a solar system where everything orbits one giant sun. If that sun flickers, even for a moment, the whole system feels the chill.
And you can see these symptoms pretty clearly. First, the semiconductor market is famously cyclical. It has these wild booms and busts. Then, you see the smaller suppliers in the area becoming even more dependent on ASML, not less. And on top of all that, the whole region is caught right in the middle of the geopolitical tug-of-war between the US and China over chips. And if that wasn't enough, they're hitting real bottlenecks at home. Not enough energy, not enough housing, and infrastructure that's just struggling to keep up with all the growth.
There's a quote from a local CEO that just perfectly sums up the mindset that created this situation. Do only what you're really good at. And hey, that intense focus is exactly what made them world leaders. But it's a classic double-edged sword, right? It's also the very thing that created this vulnerability.
So how do you cure a fever like that? Well, the leaders in the region have actually come up with a prescription. It's a strategy designed to build resilience and future-proof their economy.
The core of the plan is this idea called related diversification. Now, this isn't about just randomly jumping into new businesses. No, it's way smarter than that. It's about taking what they're already world-class at, things like microtechnology and complex systems, and using that expertise to build new economic pillars in adjacent, high-tech fields.
But, how do you know which new fields to bet on? To help make those tough choices, they've developed this really clever tool they call the Navigator.
And the Navigator is all about a simple but really powerful three-step process. First, you watch what's happening with global tech and market trends. Second, you think. You analyze those trends and figure out where Brainport's unique skills give it a genuine right to play. And finally, you act, making focused, smart decisions on where to invest and build. And this is the goal of the whole thing, finding that Brainport sweet spot. It's that perfect intersection, right, where their unique tech know-how meets markets with huge potential. We're talking medtech, energy, defense, mobility. It's all about building new strengths right on top of the incredible foundation they already have.
So that brings us to the prognosis, because the choices being made right now are going to send Brainport, and honestly, Europe along with it, down one of three very different paths.
So the big question is, what does the future actually hold for Brainport? Depending on what they do and what Europe does, there are basically three ways this could all play out by 2030.
Okay, scenario one is the best case. We'll call it strategic recovery. In this future, Europe decides to get really serious about its own tech sovereignty and invests big. Brainport becomes the absolute strategic heart of that plan.
The result? The region thrives with an economy that's not just powerful, but also diversified and resilient.
Then there's path number 2, the geopolitical shadow zone. Here, Europe kind of drags its feet. It's hesitant. Brainport keeps growing, sure, but it's left isolated and really vulnerable to pressure from the US or China. All of its amazing success is basically built on an unstable foundation.
And finally, there's the worst-case scenario, frontline Europa. In this world, Europe just fails to act. It becomes a pawn in the global game, not a player. Export restrictions get tighter, supply chains start to snap, and Brainport stops being an engine room and becomes a front line, a battlefield in a global tech conflict. And that puts it at real risk of decline. When you really step back and look at it, this story isn't just about one corner of the Netherlands. It's a major test for all of Europe. You know, this region has always been about reinvention. It went from being dominated by Philips to the era of ASML we see today. But this next reinvention, moving from a single, massive engine to a multi-cylinder powerhouse, this is without a doubt its most critical test yet. So what's the bottom line here? The path forward isn't choosing between semiconductors and something new. It's about doing both. It's a dual strategy. Keep fueling that world-leading growth engine, while at the very same time, you have to be aggressively building new, related engines right alongside it.
In the end, what happens to this small but incredibly mighty region will echo across the entire continent. The choices made in Brainport will help decide if Europe stays a major technological player or if it just becomes a piece on somebody else's chessboard. So the question isn't just for them, it's really for all of us. Is Europe ready to build its own future?